All right. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. A little later today. Thought we'd jump in for a quick live stream and see if anybody had anything they want to drop in. I wanted to talk a little bit today, quickly, just touch on a subject that's been kind of egging around and scratching and poking me for a while here, and now we're hearing about a lot of what's going on with with these transition plans for a lot of these automakers, and I want to see if you guys had any thoughts around any of that. But welcome back, and let's just see here. Welcome to the. All right, there we are. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for dropping by, and I kind of want to touch on make a quick little discussion today on a live stream and see if you had anything you guys wanted to ask or mention. Or I mean, I can tell you what I know, which is kind of marginal in terms of what this transition plan looks like with electrification. But um, if any of you wanted to talk about, what's likely the future of the legacy manufacturers, um, what does that future look like? What does that future look like for legacy auto manufacturers, um, as we transition to the this electric market? We're seeing a lot of news. Greetings, everyone. Octopus Mendez. Hey, greetings there, Octopus. So great to have you. Yeah, I guess what are your thoughts? I think for the most part, most people that watch my content, prefer the internal combustion type vehicles. It's pretty clear. EVs are a growing emerging market. Still haven't totally proven themselves with limited range issues. We're hearing of these lithium factories blowing up, and we see the odd video of a Tesla burning on the side of the road. And there's a lot of rhetoric around, the negative of electric vehicles, and clearly there's a lot of limitations there. Best regards from Ontario. AMZ88, welcome as well. I'm glad to have you here for this live stream. So, I mean, if anybody's got any offerings, any comments, where do you think these legacies? So when I say legacy, I mean the old conventional manufacturers, Ford, GM, Mercedes, Honda, all these the typical brands that we once knew, that we're seeing a lot of them transition and produce vehicles that have an electric drivetrain. But when we see this, we see a lot of these brands faltering, tripping on their own laces. They're not able to be that competitive yet. And while we're seeing GM has had a pretty good run here this summer about, selling a lot of their electric vehicles, and they say that they might even outrun Tesla at some level. Time will tell, right? Old Red, no bathroom breaks, only pee jugs. Yeah, with electric cars and electric, yeah, I mean, you probably won't need, you probably will stop more often than not. If you're driving a turbo diesel, an old Jetta, turbo diesel, you can go 1,000 kilometers. You definitely need to stop a few times or have that jug. But electric vehicles, not as much. What do we have there? Iona Pechia. Sorry, I hope I got that right. Greetings from Denmark. Good afternoon. And I'm not sure what time it is there. I presume maybe it's late at night for you guys. I don't know if you're ahead. I think you're ahead a bunch of hours in Denmark here. So I'm assuming you're probably midnight-ish, maybe 12:30, 1:30, somewhere in there. Or maybe I'm way out to lunch. I don't know. But and from Denmark, that's a great that's actually a great viewer to maybe chime in, possibly, because we're seeing what's going on in Europe. And Europe and their EU7 regulations, or their stricter CO2 emissions regulations that are coming down the chute, are forcing all of these and mandating the electrification of all vehicles that we once knew and loved. And what does that mean for a lot of these brands? I mean, look at Porsche. Okay, they've now created Macan Electric, which is kind of an interesting vehicle. But the 911 right now, there's a mild hybrid in some of the electric, the Porsches. But we also know Porsche is not doing very well with the sales of, their Taycans aren't selling all that well. Neither of the Audi products, VAG products in general. That's the Volkswagen. And you've probably heard that, Volkswagen's struggling right now. The latest news is Volkswagen is in a serious world of hurt. They're actually looking at closing down maybe two, maybe more plants. They're saying tens of thousands of workers. I think they say the VAG group, there's about 300,000 employees in that company, or the Volkswagen specific, and they're struggling. And a lot of it stems back to the electrified vehicles. Octopus Mendez, greetings from Nigeria. Hey, awesome, Nigeria. That is great. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not sure how far in terms of time you guys must be, because you're quite a bit further east. I'm thinking you're probably after midnight. If I'm not sure, but I'm just not totally sure. Iona Pelche says 28. So is that the year 28 that we're talking? And Stephen Austin Houston, interesting. Yeah, Steve, for sure. I'm going to say that the electric market. We know the American market is a little kind of slower to get there, but I think slower because the general consumer isn't a real big fan of electric vehicles. I mean, there's a lot of electric vehicle fans out there, a lot of people that love driving them, but we know the North American market's a little bit more conservative, a little more delayed in that response to the transition, which is fine by me. I love a good old fashioned diesel pickup truck or a, twin turbo V6 engine. I mean, those things are all great. Kevin, welcome back there, Kevin. Good evening from Lakeland, Florida. Hope everything's good there now. I don't know. Hopefully the storms have sort of subsided over there. I haven't heard what it's been like lately, but hopefully things are a lot better. Anton, sorry, I'm just my screen's a little fuzzy. You gotta disregard me. Anton Olenek, hybrids were a step forward, fixing a lot of ICE problems. EVs are a step backwards. You know what, Anton? I think I like what you're saying because for a while I was looking at the plug-in hybrids. I think truly the plug-in hybrids are the best of both worlds because the regular hybrids, you get the regular mild hybrids, they give you a little extra oomph and they give you a little extra economy here and there. Some of these vehicle manufacturers are creating these sort of online, the mild hybrids or hybrid systems. But it's the plug-in hybrids that I think just really, really, really dominate in my mind, because now a lot of them are rated to go, you can go 20, 30, 40, 50 miles in some cases, depends on the design and the manufacturer, just on electric. But then you never have to worry about range anxiety because then you just on you go and your ICE kicks in and you just keep on trucking. So life's good, right? With that. Welcome, Marcel. Hey, great to hear from you there, Marcel. I'm glad you joined in. And it is going to be kind of a shorter live stream, but I'm glad you're able to pop in here. Because I am actually, the way it works, I got to dart out. We have an appointment. We have to meet up. We're going to buy a new puppy. And maybe if anybody wants, maybe shout out or drop a note in there. If you're willing, do you want to see the puppy next live stream? I'd love to feature, but we're going to go meet up with these folks and hopefully share the puppy there with you guys. So Marcel, hi, Mark. I just checked to see your recent content. What do you know? You're live right now. What are the odds? I know. Thanks for watching, Marcel, and appreciate the support, the ongoing support. I really do appreciate it. And as one of the members, I definitely really, really do appreciate you coming back time and time again, asking meaningful questions, engaging, and it really does mean a lot. And hopefully you're getting a little extra, meaning and value, I guess, from myself as well. So Anton Olenek says, I think ECVT is the best transmission ever. Absolutely genius idea. Yeah, it works good, right? It's Toyota's approach, Toyota Lexus, the ECVT. So it's not your typical belt and pulley system. It's planetary gear system. It takes the torque off the line, and it's tied to the hybrid system. So it's no starters. It all works fluidly. and it's a great system. It seems to be pretty reliable, I would say. I mean, for a commuting vehicle, you couldn't want nothing really more than that. Um, let's see. Mr. Higginbotham says the first EV was made in the late 1800s, as far as I understand. Well, that's a definitely piece of wisdom nugget that I didn't know, and it's always good to know that. I did hear that first electric vehicle were produced like many years ago, but they sort of gave up on it, and I don't know if it was economics, I don't know if it was design or safety, but there was yeah, they weren't all that successful initially. Really, what it probably was, we all know what it. I mean, let's get, let's face it. A lot of times, there's too much pressure and politics behind, fossil fuels and that kind of thing. Maybe there was some pressure there. I don't know, but Marcel. So, any thoughts on the Lexus UX 250h 2.4 liter naturally aspirated with hybrid system? The Lexus UX. Is a great vehicle. I've driven a couple of them. I had a couple chances to take them for a ride. The Lexus, any of these, I'll just put this out there. Any of these vehicles that you're getting that are naturally aspirated from Toyota and Lexus are going to be a reliable piece. And those ones are like anything, the Lexus UX with the hybrid system and the naturally aspirated drivetrains, they're solid. It's a durable little piece. The only thing I would say is it depends where you're coming from as far as the types of vehicles you're used to driving. I do find like it's a nice product. It's a nice vehicle. It shows well. It even looks nice out on the road from kind of that road presence. But it's a little less refined. So if you're driving, if you get out of, say, an RX, take a test drive in an RX, and then you get into a UX, you'll feel that difference. And I mean, you should. I mean, it's a scalable model range there, but in terms of an economical, attractive little car that's, easy to own, or SUV that's easy to own and operate, and it's going to be super reliable, I would have no qualms in buying a car like that, or CUV, if you will, or SUV, or I think they're great, Marcel. I think they really are. Any of the Lexus products. I'll tell you my personal favorite Lexus for like a commuter. I think somebody asked me last time what my favorite Lexus vehicles, and I mentioned LC 500, the IS 500, as well as, of course, the ISF or their supercar. Sorry. But for a daily commuter, it's not their biggest vehicle. I personally like the 450H plus, or plus 450H, or however you want to designate that. The yeah, like that to me is a great combination. Oh, Anton, what do we have here? Mr. Higglebotham says EVs still suck on whatever, what is that? MP whatever. Yeah, I mean, EPs, they have their limits, and that's the thing, right? We know that there's a lot of limitations with electric vehicles, and range is part of it. Cold weather. Hey, we're looking outside right now, and I know it's about -5 here where I'm at. So as we start to get to -20, -30, it does have an impact. A lot of people are having to park their EVs inside again because they don't love the batteries, don't love the cold weather. Anton says, I learned in university that CVT is a holy grail of automotive engineering. Everyone wants to make it, but it always ends up unreliable. And then Toyota did that with the ECVT, which is just a planetary gear setup. Yeah, absolutely. Toyota figured it out. You know what? I don't want to I don't want to come off as a brand guy or anything, because honestly, I'm really not. I believe, and those that watch the channel regularly would probably hopefully believe that I like fun cars that don't cost you a lot of money in terms of reliability. You don't want to breakdowns, reliability issues. I mean, ultimately, Toyotas, while there's maybe more exciting vehicles, I mean, how do you argue with an ECVT? They've dominated that market. We also can't forget the fuel system. You saw my video. If you guys had come across my video here, I just did this one about how these engines are imploding. Absolutely great video. It's been very popular, and thanks for everybody who's been watching that one. But I really dive into the idea of, what these new direct injected engines are all about, and how it's actually taking a toll on the lifespan of some of these drivetrains. But Toyota comes up with a system where they use direct injection and port fuel injection. So between that and then they use other systems like their ECVT, like it's just no wonder that they own the reliability crown. They're thinking about all those details. So Marcel, noticed recently that with my BMW, if it's cold, if it's still cold, RPMs drop in two phases, I suppose, slightly over 1,000, then slightly below, then 750-ish. Not sure, but seems to shudder a bit when dropping RPMs. I don't know. Like that's, yeah. I can't say that's an anomaly. Well, it doesn't seem like an anomaly. I mean, a lot of times these vehicles are adjusting for compensating for different conditions. It depends on the humidity or the temperature outside. And as the vehicle warms up, it may go through different step changes. Usually, like you say, you'll have a high idle and then it'll just drop right down. That's kind of typical from what I've experienced. But yeah, I mean, that's hard to say for sure. Like I'd have to probably see it or kind of hear it or kind of see if it feels kind of odd. But it's not uncommon, especially in colder weather, for vehicles to make all these compensational changes, to adjust for the not just the emissions, but the O2 sensor, oxygen, and the output of the exhaust. It's one of those things that, again, if my only question would be, do you have any check engine lights? Because if not, it's likely going through a sequence that it just normally should. So it's probably not likely going to be an issue. So Marcel says, so to bombard here, no rush. Just thought I'd mention it. Yeah, no, that's cool there, Marcel. And that's, a big part of being, in the membership program. I love to engage with everybody, but, I do give some extra, winks to memberships and members. I mean, because, you guys are showing support in other ways. So I feel like it's nice to be able to give back a little bit. So 100%, no troubles. Sally says EVs are great for getting around locally as long as you can charge at home. I think EVs should be rolled out slowly to avoid the trouble they are having. Do you think BMW i4 is a fun car? Yeah, they're good. And actually, I think BMW's created a pretty good product there. I haven't heard of a ton of problems. There were some firmware issues, and I think some remote fob issues and some infotainment, some glitchy electrics for a bit in the first generations, but I think they're pretty solid. I think a lot of these are pretty solid. And I think for the most part, what I've experienced is biggest limitation just comes down to range and how that's managed, the charging and the management of the battery. But yeah, the i4 is a lot of fun. All of those electric vehicles are actually a lot of fun, but BMW brings something a little bit more, fresh than say like a Tesla. So I think they're beautiful. I love the i4s, and I think it's definitely worth a look. But yeah, I mean, the range is always an issue until maybe we get to another generation of batteries where we have something better. This is what we've got. So Marcel, so lastly, would you say a Lexus UX 250h hybrid without turbo would be suitable for a home nurse with frequent stops? I recommend it to my partner, and no, never check engine lights. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if you're doing a lot of stop and go, hybrid vehicles are good. They can give you those, those shorter bursts. Sometimes you're running the engine a little less. And I mean, the ICE is going to run in cold weather. It's just part of the program. It needs to use that to get everything functioning and charging. But in optimal conditions, yeah, the hybrid system will engage more often. And if you're doing a lot of short trips, it's going to be definitely more functional. And so to this point, the UX could be a great option. It's a smaller vehicle, and I wouldn't recommend this other one, if it weren't so good. But the problem is the price point's a little high, and that's where I'm a little shaky on that. But you get the either RAV4 Prime or the NX 450 Plus H, which gives you plug-in hybrid. Then what you're speaking of, doing these short trips, can get you there, get you back, and you don't even have to turn your engine on, especially if it's warmer out. You can just keep it plugged in every time you're at home. That's great. So that's where the plug-in hybrids are nice. But again, you pay for that flexibility, and plug-in hybrids are pretty expensive. Mr. Mr. Higginbotham says, I will say I thoroughly enjoyed driving my brother-in-law's dual motor Tesla, low 0 to 60 on 4 wheels. Wow, used to yeah, used to doing that on CB motorcycles. I know, like, right? Like, it's just one of those kind of things, driving an electric vehicle, these Teslas, I've driven Plaids. It's nothing short of breathtaking. It's absolutely, like, it puts a smile on your face. Sure, you don't get the shifting, you don't get the sounds and the oral and the shake and the chassis, but it kind of does some other things for you. It's almost like riding a roller coaster ride at California Adventure. You know that big roller coaster, California Adventure in Los Angeles, there in Anaheim. I was just there this summer, and that woof, when that thing takes off, you're sitting at the bottom, 3, 2, 1, and they count. Anybody here go on that ride? That is spectacular. And then it just goes, and wow. And that's kind of what it feels like to drive a Plaid. So it's just amazing. Marcel, on that note, I'll note that down. Thanks a lot. You bet there, Marcel. But I would, like, don't let me dissuade you from the UX. I think they're great vehicles. From my experience, they're a little, I mean, they're not as refined as the upper scale, and every layer you go up, it just feels more and more substantial, as it should. But it's still a nice product. It looks nice. It's nicely put together, and it's going to last you a lot of miles. So you really can't go too wrong there, Marcel. To be honest, I'm being totally frank about that. And MZ88. Sorry, I missed that comment. I noticed way up in the top he meant time 28 minutes after midnight. There you go. So, and yeah, so a lot of you guys are watching late at night, and I really do appreciate that. It's great to have viewers come in and spend a little time with me and with the rest of the community, really, because this is becoming quite the community. We have a lot of the same players that are coming in to say hi and drop a line, and just whether it's a question or a solution. But really, I kind of want to get to the point of are these manufacturers, these legacy manufacturers, falling on a sword? I mean, it almost feels that way. We're seeing the likes of Stellantis, they're buckling. We see it. I mean, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, they're one of the worst, hardest done by manufacturers right now, because they're trying to transition to electric in the European space, but then they're almost neglecting, at least in my opinion, the North American space. And then they go pure EV with Challengers, Chargers. Like, it just feels out of sorts, right? And then, of course, Volkswagen, they got too far down the rabbit hole with electric vehicle transition, and they sort of gave up on their ICEs a little bit, and they backed off and putting 4 cylinders in Atlases. It just doesn't feel right. And they're feeling the burn. And a lot of these manufacturers, Mercedes-Benz, are having a real hard time with their EQ series of vehicles. Porsche, hard time. I mean, all the VAG group is having a tough time. Stellantis, anybody getting on board. Flip side is Nissan hasn't got enough on board, and now they're feeling a little too outdated. So they haven't found the happy medium. But those are kind of the biggest losers right now in the industry, is Volkswagen, Nissan, and Stellantis. And a lot of it has to do with electrics. Sally, so great info. Thanks for all the insight. No, thank you, and I appreciate you engaging as well. That's great. Mr. Higglebotham says, I think of EVs as expensive toys that might burn my garage down. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. But there's been enough stories already in the press about those kind of things happen. Remember the old Chevy, the original Chevy Bolts? They were like burning right in the garage or burning on the driveway. Like, what a tragic ending to that storyline. So that's a risk, and they are kind of toys. But yeah, I absolutely, I totally hear you. So Anton says, and another thing I learned is that liquid fuels are so practical, so people would probably invent them if there was no oil. Well, they're talking about synthetics, right? I mean, we're hearing in a limited level, there may be synthetic fuels coming out too. So I think we will end up with synthetic fuels. Boom, I didn't read it all. There you go. Rather than EVs. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's going to be also, I think where we're going to eventually evolve to is sort of a very diverse market. I think truly there's always going to be this electric space. I think there's going to be that niche driver that wants that. And I think there's going to be hydrogen potentially. I think, although they're not faring all that well, and then synthetic fuels. And I think there's going to be further advancements on ICE to give them better economy. I see it a very exciting time. And a lot of these great new supercars are showcasing this new technology. Look at this new Ferrari now, the F80 now, with all these electric motors and battery packs and twin turbo V6s on board, and it's just full of technology. Granted, God forbid somebody, try to take that in for warranty work, but it's impressive what they're doing with these vehicles. I mean, I remember years ago, Porsche was using some kind of gyro system that, on deceleration. This was on the racetrack, and they were trying to develop this and utilize it. They're kind of even enhance it for the street. But I remember that, and it would, as you were braking, it was generating, and then it would build up just enough coil or energy to, as you were coming out of a corner, then it would unleash the energy. So it was just like it would give you these short bursts. And I love that idea. Like, it gives you this extra, almost free power. So, where it means like supercars, it feels like hybrid seems to be the right thing to do for performance cars, for sure, and for economy. But not everybody wants to, have a 800 horsepower. Not everybody wants, the most boring ho-hum economy car. And some people just like everyday vehicles that are just day to day. And that's where the costs are high either way. So a lot of people are just looking for something simple. And I think that's where a lot of these legacy manufacturers are shooting themselves in the foot. They're going all in, and all this development of these electric vehicles is coming from the sales of their ICEs. So if you're buying, you may not be in support of an electric vehicle, but the worst part is you're paying 20 or 30 or 40% more for that internal combustion vehicle now by that manufacturer, because they're utilizing that money to now design those EVs. See, so you are supporting that program. Unfortunately, that's where the future seems to be going. Yeah, so Mr. Higglebotham, thank you again for live on the subject. Much respect. I do appreciate that. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily, the electric vehicle is the answer. I love ICE. I do. This is truly, my bread and butter. I can work on it. I'm comfortable with it. I love the way it feels, drives, sounds. But I also see a space where there might be a practicality to slide EVs in there somewhere, or an element of hybrid seems to be very sensible. Marcel, pure EV seem like so much risk for governments to have to rely 100% on China. I mean, doesn't make sense. Us trying to be carbon efficient, China producing EV batteries powered by coal plants. I know. SMH, right? SMH. Here we're all worried about, being green and lacking, the trying to stop pollution and trying to do all the right things. And then across the pond, you got people just belting out the pollution and the safety standards and all of that. I don't even want to get into it, but it's unfortunate, and we're all paying the price, because now somewhere or the other, there's going to be this pissing match between China, North American market, or China and Europe. We're seeing that already. Volkswagen's eating crow right now. And the problem with that is eventually then you get these matches where they're throwing tariffs on each other. The Americans are throwing tariffs on Chinese cars. Chinese are putting tariffs then on the batteries and the manufacturing and the product itself that goes into these vehicles. And then you just have a perfect storm of disagreements and expensive vehicles for the future. And so I don't know where this all ends, but it definitely feels like it's a global effort, but it feels like there's still some battles there in the backyard. Tube Dude 92. EVs are going to flop. The market will always have the last say. Yeah, you know what? You make a great point. I think the consumer talks with the money. I mean, there's a point where you get influence from regulators, influence from governments, and there's a lot of powerful influence. But I mean, if there's enough people that just say, no, I'm good, I think that will sway. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of the hybrids, where EVs weren't answering all the questions. Manufacturers had to come up with something that was sort of an in the between approach, and that's where hybrids came in. So, yeah, EVs are far worse than internal combustion or diesel on the environment. Yeah, I've done videos on this, and I totally agree. The ores and the mining and the strip mining and just the big holes in the planet they're doing, and And then what do you do with it? They say they can recycle them after, 8 or 10 years. But I mean, what kind of life and how reliable are those after you recycle them? And even, yeah, I don't even know. That's a whole conversation, but it doesn't feel like it's a great end game. It feels like it's an interim, but then what do you do long term? Can you imagine all this scrap after 50 years of this? I can't even imagine. Marcel, this way China is outcompeting the West due to all this. There must be a very good reason why manufacturers make design choices based on desires of the Chinese market. Well, the Chinese market's one of the most powerful. The Americans figured that the biggest economic power in the globe. That's sort of shifting in Chinese market. You can make all kinds of arguments. I think they are now. And when you have everybody selling their cars to the Chinese market, which usually is in, like, I look at like Nissan, I think it was around 30%, 40% of their sales was going to the Chinese market. So if you remove that, I mean, that's almost half of their sales right off the top. It's a massive, massive effort. And so everybody really has to pay attention to China, because that's where the Europeans are selling their cars, Volkswagen, but they've been struggling because now people who are living in China are looking at these expensive EVs coming from Volkswagen, and they're saying, well, you know what? BYD creates this other product for half the money, and it's actually better. It's more, performs better. I like the looks of it better. And so it's going to put a lot of the European brands and every other brand that does business in China in a hard place for sure. Marcel says, I'm not against China, by the way, just interesting to see the dynamic global markets. It's a reality. Yeah, it's not for or against. I mean, I think we can go on our phones, and I think we all have. I mean, I go on my phone, we all go on our phones at some level, and we've all probably bought junk off of Amazon and junk off the internet. 90% of that stuff is coming from China anyway, right? And so we're all supporting the process, we're all supporting the economy, and it's just kind of what it is. That's they found ways to own the market. They found ways to produce goods effectively, reliably from a manufacturing perspective. But yeah, like they're working out the bugs, and they're finding those efficiencies where the legacy manufacturers just haven't really found that yet. And some of it, it might be standards and safety, and again, that's another conversation. But Rufus the Doofus says you should do a 6-speed review on some EVs. I should, absolutely. I can do more coming up, and I plan to with time. I do actually have one on there. I believe I did the Tesla Model 3, the long range. I think I did one on there. There may actually be on there, and I'll have to take a look. So yeah, if you want to see my review on that car, give it a look for sure on 6-speed reviews. I think I did the Tesla on that one. I may even have the X Plaid might even be on that one too. So give it a look. But I definitely plan to do more of these other ones now coming from Korea, Hyundai, Kia, some of the the GMs and the Fords and the stuff coming from those markets. I'd like to get my hands on too and do more of those. So yeah, 100%. So anyway, the long and short of it is, I think it feels like a lot of these manufacturers are struggling, and it's gonna be some hard times. And Volkswagen, they're canning workers, they're shutting plants. Stellantis firing workers, rejuggling, the CEOs about to leave. I mean, things are getting ugly out there in the automotive market, and a lot of it has to do with the push and the motivation to transition to electric market. And this is really causing a lot of disturbance and disruption in the market as a whole, and we're all paying for it in some way. So anyway, the long and short of it is, we're going to cut it short. I hope everybody has an absolute wonderful long weekend, and we'll talk to each and every one of you tomorrow. Well, actually, real soon. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, great video. You're going to love that one too, by the way. And we'll see you as well on Monday. Talk to you real soon. See you then. Bye-bye.